Warning.
Warning.
Warning!
Now for a word of caution.
The information you are about to hear is the exact knowledge they don't want you to know. Only on the Bridge Podcast, hosted by Travis Haley.
Don't cringe when you hear that.
I promise I'm not, man.
Oh, man. Guys, welcome to this episode. I've got a dear friend of mine, and you might already recognize his voice. If not, his name is Mike Jones, the real Mike Jones.
The real one.
Also known as Garand Thumb. So Mike runs the Garand Thumb channel. Also, he is the founder of Onward Research, which has got some cool new stuff popping up, and might even see some stuff with us in the future. And is just recently retired from the United States Air Force and former enlisted SEER instructor. You were a freaking, Navy guy at one time, so you dual service.
Had a good time. It's been a good run.
Almost became a doctor.
Yeah, almost became a doctor. I mean, becoming a doctor isn't like horseshoes where if you get close, it counts. So, it's
who quits medical school in their fourth year? Or was it
third year? Not a smart man, I'll tell you that much.
Well, you did what you love doing, man.
Yeah, it's true, man. Well, I mean, I was just, being inside, and I say that as we're doing a podcast, but like being trapped inside was just torture for me, man. I have a lot of respect for people who can do medicine, but man, I could not. It was just
you're an outdoor guy.
Yeah, it ate my soul. And being indoors all day, I just couldn't do it. And it's sad too. It's real tough. It's real tough doing medicine. It's a lot of hard information you got to tell people, and not my jam, man. Not my jam at all.
Okay. So when did you start doing the Garand Thumb channel? What year was that?
I actually have to look back a little bit. So technically, if we really step back to when I actually created the entire channel before I named it even, was like 2011, I think is when I actually started the channel itself, put up a video. And I think I was shooting pumpkins out in the Utah desert, something when I was on leave. But really getting started in Garand Thumb was about early 2017, somewhere right around there. Is when it kind of really took off, and it was really a fluke, man. I did not start doing YouTube thinking I was gonna make a career out of it or anything like that, but it was just to put out information is the only reason I did it. And before that, it was just I'd shoot in the desert and put up a video just for fun or something like that. But really, actually, making these focused videos was just to educate people as much as I could.
So now here we are, a few years later, and you have 2.2 million subs now. Is it what it's up to?
Yeah, 2.2 million. We're gaining about 100K or so a month.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
which is hard to do right now, obviously, in today's world. So especially for us in the gun industry, because we're stifled.
Yeah. And I mean, man, that is we've broached many topics of conversation right there. But if we want to talk, tech wars is what you call them, censorship or whatever you call it. I don't even know if you call it censorship. That is a topic that I would like to talk about for sure, because I think I think a lot of people don't understand it. How many people have you seen on Instagram and they go, they get a post taken down, they're like, the man is after me and I am being, unfairly censored. But I think what's more difficult is to step outside of your comfort zone. Let's take a look at the left, right? So, a lot of everyone in the military gun world, pretty right wing, So if we take a step out and we look over at the left, you're seeing a lot of the same stuff with them as well. And so the problem really, there is certainly pointed censorship of topics that we get into in the right wing world, but there's also in the left wing world as well. And it's not so much.
You mean they're getting censored as well?
Yeah, they are. They're running into the same stuff.
Really? That's interesting.
And I couldn't give you an exact number of whether it's equal to or less than or more than, but it's important to look outside of your circle. It's really important that you're honest with yourself about this. And so the problem isn't so much, that you're being individually targeted. That does happen, obviously, but rather that Instagram or Meta has a nearly impossible task. So if we take a look at it from a human perspective, how many people do you think are on Instagram right now just browsing?
I mean, got to be billions.
An insane number.
2 billion.
How many people do you think would be necessary to respond to every reported post on Instagram?
Isn't that where they got the algorithms and searching and all that stuff and keywords and everything? So
that's precisely what it is. So they have
AI.
They do. They have AI that reviews posts, and when they're reported, or if a post pops up that falls within those parameters of what the AI believes to be bad, that's when it's auto taken down. Is it good? That's hard for me to say because we don't really get a peek behind the scenes. But I guess my point, what I'm trying to get to, is that I understand. I get why they have the AI in place, because they have a nearly impossible task. And that is, how do you moderate something like that? Should something like that be moderated? That's a whole nother topic, when it comes to freedom of speech on the internet and stuff. But I understand why they did what they did, but it has certainly presented its own problems that we've obviously seen. I mean, you think of, guys like Mike Glover or Joe Rogan's gotten censored at certain points, and this is all the algorithm. I mean, these are big people in the industry, or just Joe Rogan, huge, and still they're having
Jordan Peterson's starting to getting. He's been talking about it lately, and that man is nothing but truth.
Exactly, and I know I've been banned. My account's been removed twice now. The AI just gets it, and every time I get it back, their engineers tell me the same thing, which is, sorry, man, it happens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just we're sorry. It caught
not
it.
A shame on you, that's just what happens.
Yeah, and I mean. There are certain NDAs that I'm under on that, unfortunately. So, but suffice to say, there are certainly topics that they don't want discussed or gotten into, and that's where it gets weird.
I think what a lot of people are probably interested in is, like you said, the left side is potentially getting censored as well. Do you have any examples of where they might be getting censored in different spaces?
And again, that's something I should have probably come to this table with, but I guess I wasn't expecting to get into that conversation. But I'll have to pull this up for you, man. If you go over to their side, you will see some really similar posts to the things that we have, where they will post something and it will get taken down. And they'll screenshot their post getting taken down. They'll say, "I am getting censored. This is ridiculous."
I guess I have seen that.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, that's a really good message for people to step outside your circle and look.
It is
forced.
It is, and so. It's difficult though, because it's like, what's the ratio and for what purposes are theirs getting taken down, and is that similar? Because certainly there is a war on firearms when it comes to Meta. Meta is no friend of having guns on that platform. So the fact that we're even still there is kind of incredible to me, given how
you're definitely not saying there's not a problem.
No,
you're saying there's a serious problem.
There is 100% a problem. Obviously, I've been removed from Instagram twice. So I've created like a backup and everything.
Which has got to stress you out a little bit, because I mean, we have a lot of subs too, but nothing compared to you. Because we're a little bit different. We're not doing information every day like we used to. That's how I started the company, was on YouTube, and there was no restrictions. We did whatever we wanted, and now it's like I feel sorry for you guys. And then I'm like, well, we need to get back into that too. And then I'm like, wait, I'm gonna have to go talk to Mike.
It's oddly, so I'll tell you that my employees were stressed when that happened, because I have, a camera guy, and then we have people who now work for Onward, and people who support Garand Thumb and stuff. So for them, it's stressful. They're like, oh my God, is my job like going away because it get deleted? No, we're fine. We're going to recover and everything. So I'm never that worried, because people come for the content. They come to learn. They come to have fun, so they're going to find us on whatever platform that may be. So I'm not particularly worried. It's just kind of a nuisance, it's just kind of annoying to have to deal with, I guess.
Well, with that wasn't the point to talk about algorithms and Instagram or Facebook or anything, but congratulations on your success, question mark?
No, it is. We're very happy, We've always been definitely really focused in where we're taking our content, man, I don't know why I'm thinking of random stuff, but doing media, as much as you've done it, as much as I've done it, you've noticed that when you put together a scene, in whether you're talking, whether you're doing a shooting, everything is very deliberate, right? There's nothing that's not deliberate about filming, in my opinion, because you have to do the actions, you have to show what you want to show, and you're not going to show what you don't want to show. And so I think what's been interesting for me after having done Garand Thumb for a while, and I'm no expert at media, but when I watch movies now and watch TV shows, I have a very different perspective on what they're doing now, because I know when they show something that's very arrow sharp, pointed, focused. And so I've definitely gotten a different opinion on kind of their own cultural war that they've been waging on what I would consider maybe traditional values. Is that a good way of saying it?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So I've seen that. I do consider it a war. You know, I do consider it something that it's an information war. It's a war of ideologies, and they're really good at it.
Which is worse than actually going out on the street and fighting, in my opinion.
Way worse. And it's a war that we're really bad at, man. Like really bad at on our side.
Well, let's talk about a lot of stuff today. You know,
Yeah.
I think, you know, as it pertains to your introduction and what you've done in really a short amount of time, you know, to influence and I hate. You're not the typical influencer. Obviously, you're not a guy that's just in your mom's basement LARPing and doing videos, which there are a lot of those people. And you know what? That's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's America. Like I always say, you can do whatever the hell you want to do, and I'm going to support that person that wants to sit in his mom's basement and do that. But you have a, you know, extensive background in self-reliance and life preservation and you know, tactical operations and special operations and now media, and this growth has been great, and everybody, you know, has seen that, man. They've seen you grow from, you know, not just being, you know, my son, but also
we have to tell that story, by the way.
We do need to tell that story really quick.
Yeah,
but what I want to do is we'll start with that, and then I want to get into, you know, everybody knows Garand Thumb, but I want to know, which I know who you are, man. You know, I've known you for years, but tell people who Mike Jones is. That's interesting. That's different.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait. So
let's tell the story.
Okay, so I think I owe a lot to you, man. It's a little bit emotional for me in some ways because you know, everybody needs their break, kind of, you know, and it's hard to kind of break out of all the people doing gun content and doing, you know, survival and equipment and gear content. That's hard to do. So I remember it was like 2016, I think. I was just like a E4 in the Air Force, like just teaching survival and stuff. And I had posted a video and somebody said, "Hey, you look a lot like Travis Haley." I go, "Well, that's common. I hear that a lot. I'm actually his son." And so he laughed, and I kind of kept it going. You know, people would comment that every once in a while because you, obviously at that point, you were, I mean, the biggest. You know, you were doing all the videos. Magpul was still hot.
What do you mean people was?
It's
careful. Cut. Turn the shit off.
Turn the shit off. Well, there's a lot of big people.
I was
in the
doing
industry
well.
now.
I was doing well at the time.
So when it came to guns at that time, who were you gonna watch? It was you, man. It was Travis Haley. You were gonna watch, whether it was any of your videos that you'd put out. Everyone was watching your stuff. You were like the only guy in the sphere doing it. So obviously, you know, I'm gonna throw stuff out there and be like, "Oh yeah, of course, that's my dad," you know. So, but I thought it was really cool, man, because I've actually taken this really to heart in my own social media work and that I do now. But I remember somebody commented on Instagram. And they said, "Hey, you look like Travis Haley." Said it again. And I tagged you back. I go, "Yeah, that's my dad." And then you shot right back and you're like, "Yep, that's my son." And I was like, I was just E4. And I was like, "Oh my God."
There's a couple of comments. I remember one, I was like, I think I wrote like, "Hey son, what did I talk about airing out family affairs?" And that's when everybody's like, "It's fucking real.
Yeah, it's fucking real.
It's fucking real." And they freaked out, and the entire world for years. Yeah. This wasn't like just months. There's still people that come up to me and go, is Mike actually your son?"
I confirm it usually.
And I'm like, "Look, I just don't talk about it, all right?"
Yeah, I'm like
they're still confused. They walk away. Like even students of mine will mess with them.
I still do too. But yeah, I mean, for it that kind of
people demanded a paternity test.
They did.
They demandanded a paternity test.
We haven't done one yet, so we still have to.
How funny would it be if you were
if we did it and then it was
that'd be fucking weird.
that'd be terrible for my parents. So anyhow,
I need your mom's number right now. I gotta call her, talk to her,
give her a
see
call.
who the hell she is.
So we, yeah, man. I mean, that gave me a little bit of a boost and kind of helped the trajectory. In fact, I don't think we even met till 2018 SHOT Show. Like I think it was a full year and a half later after we kind of did that whole stuff. Then we saw each other at SHOT Show, and you're like, "Hey, man," and you've always been a big support to me, man. So I do the same thing, where I think it's humility. I think it's being humble about your position is really important. I think no matter what you do, like I'm just a dude making videos on YouTube. Like how important is that? And it's not. And so like I've never tried to have like a think of myself in a position of authority or think of myself as in any way better. So I've always tried to interact with everyone I possibly can and to try to be, just down to earth about it, because, things can change on a dime, and how you treat people is how you'd want to be treated. So, you never want to be terrible to anybody.
I get an amazing opportunity to meet a lot of people around the world like you do. And there's, you come across certain people in the industry, and it's like the innovation concept, the diffusion of innovation concept I talked about earlier, where there's only a handful of innovators in the world. Matter of fact, only 2.5% is what they calculate through society. And I have I don't like to, I'm not boasting or anything, but I have always had the opportunity to see things in certain people and go, this guy's got talent, and that's it. And that's why I'm like, I'll entertain this guy. There's so many people in the internet, I'm like, I'm not fucking giving piss ants the satisfaction.
Sure.
And what is that thing? It's not because I can just see something that nobody else can see, but if you can, everybody knows what passion is, right? And I tend to be a person that chases opportunities and brings passion with me. I don't just chase my dreams and passions. So I see that in other people, I think. I see other people chasing opportunities because they give a shit. They care. And I know you did, man. And I saw that in you. And I knew you had talent. And I knew you'd do something great one day, and I didn't know what the hell that was.
Onward Research.
I mean, I thought it'd be, bigger than what it is.
Yeah,
but
you thought it'd be better by now. maybe be a doctor or something important.
You could have been a house of learned doctors. But yeah, no, I'm glad that worked out. And next thing you know, I guess the next time we met, was that Hawaii? Or no, did we meet a couple times?
No, that was
it was Hawaii.
Filming in Hawaii.
That's right.
Yeah, that was it, man. We were obviously filming the hotly awaited sequel to Jurassic World.
Right. It was incredible. If you haven't seen Jurassic World Exodus, you can find it out there.
Good.
And again,
best CGI in the game.
That was another kind of trap, because
Greg Wong, dude.
Greg Wong, he tells me nothing. I see a post on the internet saying, who wants to see Travis Haley and Mike Jones, Garand Thumb, go and fight?
He mommy daddied us.
Dinosaurs in Hawaii. And I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Yeah.
And then I said, Greg, what is this crap on the internet I'm seeing, man? I'm going with this kid that's supposed to be, everybody thinks is my son now. What the hell? He's like, oh yeah, I was going to tell you about that. And I'm like, I don't, it looks like I don't have a choice anymore, because the entire internet's like, yeah, that's awesome, let's do it. So I was like, is there any guns involved? He's like, well, yeah. I said, is it a gun industry kind of film? He said, no, it's Jurassic. It's a fan film for Chris Pratt's and his new movie coming out. And,
I wonder if you've seen it.
And I was like, wait, it has nothing to do with the gun industry? He's like, no. Is that okay? I was like, I'm in.
Yeah. Well, you know how he got me in on that?
I never heard the story.
You never heard that story?
I don't think so.
Greg Wong calls me and he goes, hey, Mike, we are making a Jurassic World fan film. I'm like, great. He's like, we got backing. I'm like, okay. And he goes, and Travis Haley is in it. And I was like, Travis Haley's in it. He goes, yeah. And Travis Haley says he wants you to be in it. I'm like,
that motherfucker. Dude, he's around here still.
I know. And he bamboozled me.
That's the first time I heard that. He mommy daddy.
Because then I called you later. And I was like, yo, we're in a film together. You're like, oh yeah, Greg just told me. I guess I'm in it too. And I was like, that son of a gun. But you know what? That's a great quick starting behavior. That's some real Steve Jobs stuff right there, you know?
He is definitely a quick starter.
Hey,
he scores a 9 on the cognitive scale.
Yeah, he made it, dude. And we made a movie. The best CGI.
Anthony's back there laughing because Anthony has to work with him. He said, yeah, he's a 9.
CGI in any film ever.
The greatest. Yeah. Now, he said we were backed, funded. That was zero budget.
That was zero budget.
No money except for shipping everything out and gear that we made custom the day before.
Yeah,
and we had 4 days to film that, and he told us 2 weeks prior.
Yeah, well, it was backed by you.
I know.
Financially.
I found out after the shop, after we wrapped.
Yeah,
I saw the bill.
It worked though.
So, but it wasn't much. That was less than $10,000. That whole thing.
I wonder if Chris Pratt has seen it.
He needs to.
Yeah, he probably just saw it and clicked off of it really quick.
He's like, this is not going to be good. Predator versus, yeah. Anyways.
I'm not going to deal with it.
So anyways, that's how we met. Okay. Yeah. So, and then here we are today. So with that, man, I think it's a good opportunity for you to tell us who Mike Jones is. And because I know it's been all over the place, right?
Sure
and
has,
so where are you at right now, man?
I'm going to say what every guy says though, is, at the core, I'm a family guy. I'm all about maximizing my time with my wife and maximizing my time with my kids, and making sure that they grow and that they become, well-adjusted adults, and watching them succeed, and, just watching them grow is the greatest joy of my life, and then, going through this life with my wife is just what's most important to me. It's what I center my life around. What gives me drive, that I want to make this world good for them, and that's why we, believe so strongly in the message that we put out, why we're so careful with the information we put out, why the type of information that we put out, and, everything about it. But it all centers back on the family, man. I'm sure it's same thing for you. Why do we do what we do? It's for, our families at home, for our wives, for our children, to make sure that they, they grow up in that good world, that our children can inherit a good world, and that they can continue this and try to make sure that good men succeed, and that, evil doesn't. And it sounds so, what's the word for it? Just, what every movie says, but it's true. It's what we want. We want a good, stable world of good values. That's what the human race is built on. Just feel like I'm watching that kind of slip away right now with how the world's kind of been going,
It is slipping away.
Yeah.
And you said a couple things that triggered some thoughts. You're a guy you're a family guy. You started that by saying, I'm going to answer this like a normal guy.
Yeah.
I'm a family guy.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a normal guy thing.
It's how I was raised. It's what my dad taught me,
Which is genetics, right? Ancestral or whatever. It's passed down.
Sure.
At the same time, if we look at the mind architecture of that, the difference between a nice guy and a good man.
So I can conceptualize it, but I'd like you to tell me, because I'd like to hear this.
And it's other people's theories, but I agree with it 100%. And I'll paraphrase kind of, but it's the nice guy's, he's a nice guy. How many times have you said that about somebody, right?
That's in the military. You go, hey, how's Bill? You're like, he's a nice guy. It's like, oh, and
but if you were talking about one of your brothers and I said, hey, how's Johnny? And you were like, this guy's fucking solid.
He's reliable. He's reliable. I trust this guy.
Yeah, you probably say something more like, I trust him.
Yeah.
He's a good man.
Yeah.
He's a good man, right? There's this whole concept to that. So I love breaking down that architecture and the science behind who we are and the history. Again, studying ancient warriors, man, you'll find that they were all good men. They weren't nice guys.
Yeah,
the fuck is a nice guy? Not to say that compassion and caring and saying the right things to people and being impeccable with your words and never taking things personally, never making assumptions, and always climbing the ladder of excellence, like the 4 agreements of life. If you can do that, I think that's a good thing. That's a good idea, which makes you a good man. And that's why you care about your family, because you're a warrior first. Right?
Exactly. You know what really galvanized it for me is, when I really started getting into YouTube, really started to, begin to do all these equipment reviews and kind of get our philosophy out there and that type of thing, is I talked to somebody who their job was social engineering. I had never heard this term prior to 2017. Are you familiar with this term?
Yeah.
Okay, so for people who aren't familiar, in case they're in the audience, essentially the human mind is pliable, right? Especially groups of people. You tend to want to agree with a crowd. You want to agree with the majority. Social engineering is simply helping you to do that. So social engineering can be very benign. It can be the way a street sign is placed, or the way you funnel traffic to make sure that people don't walk into the street and get themselves killed. And it can be as nefarious as hiring crowds to protest or to cheer for certain things, or to put crowds in place on certain TV shows to champion certain things. And when you begin to really kind of get into it, and especially on the internet, social engineering is terrible, right? All these accounts that are created simply to parrot ideas so that you agree with them, because you hear it over and over and over. When you see how much money is poured into social engineering, whether it be from our very own government or whether it be from others, and you see the influence that it has on people, it's actually really scary when you realize both how much money is poured into it and how effective it is.
Especially when you find out the government is the #1 funder of social engineering in the country, and also the #1 funder of common enemy intimacy practices that are negative common enemy intimacy. Right? There could be like, hey, did you see that video, that guy cutting that dude's head off the ice? That's a bad idea. So I'm going to create this intimacy with you to go, we need to go fuck this guy up.
Yep.
Right? And that's the good social engineering side of common enemy intimacy, but versus bad. Most of it's bad right now, and that's the problem. And bad, it's not just because bad is louder, because we know the world's a beautiful place. We know it's still an amazing, great place. It really is.
The world is beautiful.
Right? There's nothing wrong with the earth that we stand on.
No.
It's the people that have created the boundaries and the rules of life that they sprinkle on top of you to try to make you forget about what the true nature of life is. And I think that's where they're starting to master that.
You know, it's so odd to me. Were you forced to read Brave New World in 1984, like those two books as a child?
No, but I've read it in school. It wasn't.
So Brave
New.
It
was in high school.
So they're both talking about dystopian environments. One is basically through entertainment, and one's through strict control and lobotomies and et cetera. But in Brave New World, it's a pretty good world. You got great entertainment, great drugs, and you're fairly well cared for. But the influence of the people is easily changed, and that's what I kind of feel like we're in. We're very easy. There's a lot of entertainment. Our standard of living has never been higher in the history of the human race ever. This moment that we are living in at this precise second,
greatest times
it has
ever.
Never been better to be a human being. You got food everywhere, but
now you got to ask how many houses don't have an Xbox.
Exactly,
you know what I mean, or something.
Exactly.
I mean, the government has created that.
Exactly, and everything's so good, but
and we're not anti-government here.
No, of course not.
We've served our country all of our freaking adult lives. So
exactly, it's the thought process that we're drowning in information that isn't information. There's a lot of stuff that goes around that's not really pertinent, if that makes sense. If we have so much at our fingertips, and yet people seem to be less informed. Have you ever watched interviews from like the 60s and the 70s, heard people talk, or even further back, 50s, 40s? You can go back and you can watch these old clips. People, it's very, very fascinating to me to see how people thought and how they spoke, prior to the internet and prior to, the media getting to the point it's at right now.
What do you think is the biggest difference between then and now?
People seemed in those old interviews to really pause and think about their words prior to saying them. The language is, of course, a little bit more. It's kind of beautiful. I feel like it's kind of a more formal English, obviously, because and they seem to really think about what they're saying. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe I'm romanticizing the past, and that's a definite possibility. But
no, there's a reason.
I feel like they really thought before they said something. And I feel like people don't pause as much to think before they say things, because you can just blast things out immediately. But, back then, a reel of film is going to be much more expensive. So if you're going to say something on film, you may want to say something a little bit more profound.
Study. They took pride in their notes. They took pride in their speaking points. They had no teleprompters a long time ago. So there wasn't scripted information coming at them. So they had to be keyword authentic. And so I think we've obviously lost our authenticity in the media.
I think that's a good word for it, authenticity.
And I think why we've lost authenticity is because I was talking to I talked to a bunch of, I think I've mentioned this one of the last podcasts, talking to a lot of elderly people. Yeah. My parents are up there in age, and their dad's in the hospital again today, and he's not doing well.
Yeah, sorry to hear that, man.
84 years old, and today's actually their 52-year anniversary.
Wow.
And I got to call him after this. Can you remind me?
I will. I got you, man.
And I ask them. I ask a lot of older people. There was a 93-year-old lady in our family the other day I asked. And I've actually gone to old folks' homes and asked questions to people when my grandparents were in there. And I said, has there been hard times in the world before? And they go, of course there has. And I'm like, has there been harder times in the United States than what we have right now? And they go, and I said, in your lifetime, in the last 90 years. They laugh and go, of course we have. And I'm like, can you give me examples? Yeah. And they say, well, have you, Travis, like you are a combat veteran and you have many combat tours. Have you ever been in a war where over 400,000 people died on your side? Have you lost everybody you ever owned or knew or loved? Have you ever had your president assassinated in the streets? Have you ever been through a massive depression and recession? We think we're in a depression right now. It's headed towards that. It is. It's a recession right now. It's headed towards it. This is a history repeating itself, but people are losing their minds over what to do about it. So I think that's the thing here is like going even back to the social media, is what people are saying, well, then what do we do? Here's what I'm finding, though, that was very interesting with a lot of these people that I interviewed. I said, what's the difference then? And they said, America's lost its purpose.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We have no purpose as a country.
Yeah.
Meaning that we the people have lost connectivity. We've lost community. We've lost, again, I said this a couple days ago. Most people that I talk to don't even know their next door neighbors.
It's true.
Because maybe they're too busy. They got their own kids. They got their own things going on. They're running and gunning and trying to go through life, but they don't take the time to build a network of community members or neighbors that you know. It's good to get to know them. Wow, fuck, that guy's a liberal.
Yeah.
Why would you not want to know him then?
I try to.
Just like he should know you, because maybe you actually could sit your asses down for 1 second and stop with the bullshit and actually realize that both of you have a purpose. Both of you believe in something. And maybe it never works out, but at least you tried.
At least you tried.
You tried to create community.
I think of everything that we've accomplished in as far as like technological advancement when it comes to the human race. I think that the worst thing that could have ever happened to us was the internet. I truly do believe, even though I make my money and I make my living, I do think that ultimately the internet is not good for our monkey brains. We are just not ready, man. We are not ready for the non-human interaction. We're not ready for the not face-to-face and not see the subtle way the human face moves as we talk, because you gain so much from talking to somebody, from looking into somebody's eyes, and from seeing the way that they react. And it's so much more genuine than the ingenuine communication we have online. And we lose that sense of community. We lose that kind of thing that gels us all together, which is being human beings who talk to each other. And suddenly you're just seeing a profile picture with text, and there's no context. There's no subtle human movements that make it seem real. And you're able to infer whatever nefarious or good purpose you want from that. You can, if somebody's your hero, he's always going to be your hero, because no matter what he says, you're going to read those words in a way that's going to make him endearing to you. And if somebody's not your friend, you're going to read those in a tone that's always going to be angry to you, because once your human monkey brain is set on that, we're just not capable, man. This is too much. Yeah. This is not good.
Because I don't get the time to look at you in your eyes. I don't get time to feel. I don't get to take you out in the front yard and say, let's fix this shit, like we used to.
Like Mike.
You always see the old school guys and they're like, fucking give me your address. I'll come to your house right now. Punk ass kid.
It's true though. I mean, what Mike Tyson said, nobody's afraid of getting punched in the face anymore, right? Because think about the meanest comment somebody says. If I were to comment, I'm like a Travis Haley hater. I'm like, hey, your face looks stupid, and I think you're really dumb, and I think your kids are dumb too. I would never. No one, for the most part, no one's ever gonna walk up to you
and say that to my face.
Yeah, because it's rude.
Not because they were thinking, and not because of the defensive mentality of who I am. Yeah. Nobody would do that to anybody.
Yeah, no one's. Maybe you're gonna have a few people who are gonna get angry, but by and far, I'm gonna say a solid 95% of this time, even if someone really thought that, they're gonna rethink it. One, not say it to you because it's mean. People, I just don't believe are naturally mean people. I think that people are inherently good, and two, they don't want to hear what you're going to have to say back, because they're going to have to face the music for that verse. They type out that comment and toss their phone in the bathtub, or
like we talked about, that we were talking about the chimp paradox. You're talking about that monkey brain comes out all of a sudden.
Oh yeah.
And you can't stop that. You can't fight that. So you have to learn to keep that at bay. And we're forced to do that in person. You're forced to do that in person. On the internet, the concept of hiding behind a keyboard does that, and has, I agree, weakened society. It absolutely has. It's an amazing tool. I mean, we've connected with more people. I've learned more about my family than I ever have in my life. I've built a business on it. You have. Everybody does. But the balance of opposites, and we're not balancing. So
you gotta wonder, what's the answer? What's the answer there? Because I think this is why.
Maybe we'll find out what happened to the Egyptians pretty soon.
Maybe we're gonna find out. Aliens come down. But I think this is why we look at military service with such fondness sometimes, because you know what, as shitty as it could be, as much as I may have disliked some of the things that were going on, I was with the dudes. Every day I went in and there was the same group of guys, and I trained with them. I sweat. You sweat with them and you work with them and you get to know them, and you might have disagreements with them, but by God, when you sweat and you bleed with people, you love those people, even if you disagree. Like, hey, Bill over there is a libertarian or a liberal, but you know what? Bill's okay because we carried that log for 200 miles and that sucked. And Bill carried that log. Therefore, Bill's good in my book, even though he believes in even
you
though
put your
liberal.
differences aside.
Exactly. Yeah. And you work towards the common good, which in this case is carrying a log 200 miles. It's a small microcosm of a community, but I think that's why so many military members miss it so much right now, because I feel like you miss so much of that community when you leave it, especially in today's modern, fast-paced age.
That's what scares me, because I remember back in my career never having a political conversation that went bad, never having a religious conversation with anybody really about, because, Sunday came around, dudes went to church or went to the synagogue or went to wherever they went to mosques
the pagan festival, whatever they're doing.
Whatever, right? And nobody really said, oh, you're going to a Catholic church? Oh, you're going to a mosque? Oh, no. And nobody talked about race. Yeah, there's always racism everywhere, but it's nothing in the military compared to what it is. And even in the Marine Corps, there's no such thing as a black Marine or a white Marine. It's dark green Marine or light green Marine, which some people still go, well, you're still putting a fucking color to it. And I'm like, good point. But at least it's taking away that negative stigma that everybody has in society about race.
There's that real famous quote from that Air Force general in the 70s, and they asked him about, racism in the Marine Corps. And I can't remember the exact quote, but he said something to the fact that the Marine Corps isn't racist because they treat everybody like the same, just terrible.
Everybody shit.
Treat everybody terribly.
Which is bonding, though, back to your point.
It is.
Right? When you're sweating and you're sugar cooking in this freezing-ass, cold, wet, and tired on a beach in the middle of the night, you're questioning, why in the hell am I doing this? This is nothing like the poster. It's that bleeding and sweating and crying and living and together is what creates that bond and community and camaraderie. And that never disappears, right?
Yeah, and you bring up...
And America as a whole, I think, used to have that.
I think we did. I really think we did. Man, people cannot talk to each other anymore. It's become very, very black and white, and it seems like the gap and the chasm grows wider, and I don't know why. I don't know what's causing that. I don't know if whether that's related to the internet or if that's just a natural phenomenon. China, or I don't know what
which is a serious problem to me. I'm very nervous about that.
And you should be. Did you hear about those transmitters from the cell phone company? What's their name? Starts with an H. Was it
cell phone company?
Yeah, the Chinese cell phone company that makes cell phones. Is it Huawei? I'm trying to remember the name of their. They make most of the infrastructure, and apparently they had cell phone towers that were able to intercept some military signals and transmit that information back. I mean, it's a problem. If you don't believe that these guys aren't doing everything in their power to collect all the information on us.
Well, I mean, I've traveled. The biggest thing is the presence, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with people living abroad, obviously, because I've lived and worked in over 7 different countries, whatever it is.
Yeah, NBD.
But China owns all of Central and South and Latin America.
Yep.
It owns all of Africa. It owns every diamond mine, every tire plant, everything that you see, every convenience store, every pharmacy, every hospital is owned by Chinese people, right? The infrastructure is growing. It's happening in the United States.
It's happening in Afghanistan,
and
for
most
example.
people are like, well, what's wrong with Chinese people? Nothing. It's the PLA. It's the People's Liberation Army of China is what I'm worried about. They've always been a monster. They've always seen themselves as a world economic leader, regardless if they're actually leading in the numbers or not. And if you look back thousands of years ago, savage, and they still think the same way. Their government still thinks that way. That's scary. And then the fact that everybody's bowing down right now, and we're, I'm not going to get into politics here, but why the hell, considering that we have more oil than we need right here, why are we sending our reserves to other places, especially companies that I'm not even going to get into it. Yeah, because everybody's talked about this. It's not even necessary to go into, but I think the more important factor is not bitching about those things, which I almost got into this tangent, which can create common enemy intimacy, and I don't want to do that.
No, we don't want to do that.
I want to make people understand that life gets harder.
Yeah, it does.
And you have to become stronger. You have to. Period. You can't argue that. If anybody argues that you should not become stronger with life, then you must not have you got a boring ass life.
Not just a boring ass life. You're probably just disconnected from reality.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems there, in my opinion.
And that really kind of brings it back to like, you know, like what is kind of the purpose of all this? What is the purpose of why we do the channel and stuff? And that's really like a part of the crux of it is getting stronger, you know? And
I've noticed you changing lately, and I was going to ask you about that. I think you're about to go into it. So bring why you started as an extremely talented, educational, motivational, inspirational, empowering, entertaining, fun, influencing, like knowledge transfer person, all those things, which was great. You hit everything good, and that's why you have the success that you have online. You share knowledge well. You've got hella charisma, and people love to listen to you.
Yeah.
And so, but all of a sudden, I'm starting to notice a little bit more serious side of Mike Jones. What is that?
There's multiple facets to it. So let's talk about it. One sec here. Got a burp. Okay, so.
You need a tissue?
No, I'm good, man. I'm going to start crying. So no matter what, there is an audience component to it. So, for example, what the type of content that me and you made in 2017, would that fly nowadays?
No.
Okay, yeah, why?
Well, all the stuff we've already talked about. Number one, it's just not accepted anymore.
It's not accepted. It's hit saturation. Everybody does it now. Everybody knows it's not novel or anything like that. So I've been waiting. I've been very, very focused with my content and the type of content that we've been putting out. I said we've always had a plan on this, and we've been pushing it to what I've always wanted to talk about, which is survival, which is one of my many loves in life. And it just so happened that as we pushed towards that, the country was, you know, we find ourselves where we are at now, which is at a weird divide. Things seem to be getting a little bit worse. The good men seem to be planting their roots down and standing the ground, and the bad people seem to be getting more brazen. And so people have this unease, if that makes sense. There's a lot of unease right now. And again,
is that because it's an internal threat? Where typically in America's history, they've always been external threats, and people didn't really have to worry about a whole lot, because it's just like when I went overseas, I never had to worry. And that's where I think people go, well, Travis, what do we do? When do we go to guns? I'm like, okay, stop being fucking paranoid right now. But it's like when I go overseas, I don't have to worry about saying, and never have I in any missions that I've ever done, had to turn around and go, no, son, stop, stay back, stay behind cover, right?
Yeah.
Don't come outside. Don't go outside your home. Hey, we got gas masks. We got, that shit happens everywhere in the world. If people could see what's even going on in some third world countries, or even the Ukraine right now, it's devastating. And in 60 days, Russians will own Ukraine if they don't do something. So like in all those families, mass casualties, mass cemeteries or grave sites all over throughout the cities that people don't see. I've been getting videos and stuff from certain people, and it is insane how much chaos is going on there. And people think that can never happen here. And I remind people that we're one of the youngest countries on the face of the planet.
We sure are.
And we're, so what is...
I think the best way to say it is that when the pandemic started, everything kind of changed, We isolated at first. I would say it was positive. Everyone was like, all right, we can do this. We can go ahead and isolate. But as the isolation grew longer and as the economy struggled more, we started to see some riots. Sometimes the riots were over something that was important and that needed to be rioted over. Sometimes it was over nothing. But people saw how easy it was for a city to completely lose all semblance of civilization. It didn't take much, and it didn't take much time. And suddenly a concept that was completely foreign, a U.S. city falling completely into chaos. And again, this isn't the first time it's ever happened in our history. Obviously, we have riots that have traveled back for a while, but it was the first time that you really saw riots really breaking out over a whole not a lot. It wasn't breaking out over a lot. And people, I think, saw that maybe it was a little bit more fragile than we I've been led to believe up to that point. And I think people got worried. And I think that worry has only been increasing as the economy is not really recovered. And people are worried what's going to happen when people start to hit their desperation point. Because let me ask you this question. How much food does the average person have in their house? How long is it going to last them?
Most likely less than 2 to 3 weeks.
Unless you're Mormon and they have 2 years.
Right.
But
smart thinking. Right. And they're not paranoid.
No, they're
Mormons
not.
Are not paranoid at all.
They're smartest.
A prepared society that never forgets history.
And so the question is you've been in countries where this has happened, Travis. What happens when people don't have food?
Well, we rape, pillage, and steal.
We sure do. So I think people understand that it's a fragile society now. And those riots showed them that it didn't really take much for things to get much more desperate than they thought it ever would.
That's a good point, man. And a lot of people get hung up on the fact of the riot itself, right? Yeah. Or the reason why we're out there, sure. Or BLM and Tifa, this and that, whatever. And January 6th, whatever you want to call it.
I don't care.
I think that's a really intriguing focus. Is what's actually being told out of that, right? And that's what's happening is that there's a lack of response. We know it's fragile, almost like it's a social engineering experiment to say, hey, if the world falls apart, we should probably test and see what happens. And I'm not saying that is an actual thing. That's totally just subjective thought. It's theory. But a lot of people are like, yeah, that's exactly what happened out there. Like, no, you don't know that.
You don't know.
You don't. And period. You can say, it's exactly what's happening. You have zero proof. You could not go into court and justify that and testify and say, hey, I have absolute little evidence the U.S. government swordfished our ass to try to make us stronger, which is a theory, or they did it to see if we were weak enough to attack us. Like, okay, lose it, dude. You're coming up with stuff. So, but think about what we should be doing differently instead of just bitching about what it could be. Yeah. Right. What is the thing that we could be doing? We could be taking it more seriously.
And I think people are taking it more seriously. And so it was our perfect time, of course, to start introducing a lot of our survival material that I'd been ready to teach for a long time. And I think it's really important. So when I became a survival instructor, or in the Air Force, what's called a SEER specialist. So everyone runs SEER a little bit differently. The Navy has it as like a shred out. Same thing with the Marine Corps. Army is a shred out. But in the Air Force, it is its own career field. You can spend your entire 20, 30 years as a SEER specialist, and you can teach the entire gamut, anything from survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, as well as other things that we don't talk about. And so it's a very interesting, very slept-on career field, and I really, really loved and enjoyed my time there. But here's the most interesting thing. If we take it to the most basic level of SEER, we teach survival. When you say SEER, people go, oh, yeah, you go in the woods and you, eat a bunny rabbit, right? Yes, you do. You do eat a bunny rabbit. And what's the point of that? And so what I would tell my students when I would bring them to the woods for the first time, because honestly, in our society, most people grew up in metropolitan areas. They're not really familiar with the woods, and that's okay. In fact, that's great. That means you're living at a very high standard of living. That's
60% of the military, 70%.
Yeah, awesome, fantastic. That's wonderful. But now I got to get you there. And what I tell them is, I'm going to get you to the level of an 18-year-old in 1830. That's what I need to get you to. And it sounds simple, but in 1830, if I were to tell little Timmy, like, hey, Tim, go get a rabbit and make us some stew, or go and start a fire.
Right, he's out the door.
Yeah, he knows what to do. He goes and gathers dry wood. He knows where to get dry wood from. If it's raining, he knows where to get the dry wood within that dead tree, right? It's an upright, standing tree, out of the rain, nothing soaking in, anything like that. He knows how to cut it up. He knows how to start the fire. He knows he has to get those nice little shavings down, and then he's going to ignite those, stack the fire, get the rabbit. He knows how to skin the rabbit because he's done it his entire life. He's watched his father, he's watched his grandfather do that his entire life.
Well, they didn't go to the grocery store.
Precisely. He knows exactly.
They did those things.
He knows exactly what to do. So to teach, big babies, a.k.a. DOD members who grew up in a city, how to get to that point is a little bit of a process. And you see how little people actually know. It's like, hey, where do you gather wood from? They're like, off the ground. Like, well, no, it's gonna be wet. It's gonna be wet. They're like, okay, well, this tree right here. I'm like, well, what's wrong with this tree? They're like, well, it looks big. I couldn't cut it down. I'm like, no, the problem isn't that it's big. The problem is it's got green leaves on it. It's an alive tree. It's got moisture in it. You can't cut it down. So it's like, it seems simple, but it's not. But that's the most basic aspect is, hey, how do I survive when I don't have the infrastructure? And that's like the most basic thing of survival. And so like slowly getting people to the point where they're really interested in that has been a big goal of the channel for a long time. And we're just getting to that point. In fact, on another video, on another podcast, I mentioned you should be able to rebuild civilization with an axe. And it's a cool concept, and it really doesn't take much. In fact, we used to do it all the time when we go out there going through team training or when we were instructors. One thing that we always prided ourselves on was making our instructor living area like as cool as possible. It's like, yo, did you hear that these instructors here made like a 2-story like freaking tree house? Like United States Forest Service actually got pissed and like fined us like a couple $1,000s. But like the point is learning those basic skills. How do I restart civilization? Like everything fails. What do I do? How do I even start a fire? How do I skin a rabbit? How do I start growing food? These are all things that are now becoming popular, and I'm sure this will wane probably, right? And in fact, I hope that I teach this, I do videos on it, and I teach courses on it, and then everybody learns it, and they're like, cool. And then I start doing survival videos and they're like, whatever. And they move on to the next cool thing, whatever it may be, because that means that the United States is stable and that civilization is still together, and that's the best case scenario, but at least they know and they've gotten through the fad and they have that information in their head. That's the only goal I have right there. Just make sure that they get it before anything bad happens, to make sure we can continue this great country if the worst were ever to occur, I guess is the point.
Yeah, and hopefully it never does.
I don't want it to, because like you said, you've seen what happens to countries when they fall into war.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, any other example in life, I think that's what people go, well, what do I need to know, Mike? What do I need to do? Mm-hmm. Well, think about it as simple as anything else in your house. If you had a fire in your house, what would you do?
Keep it going. Oh, sorry. You're talking about, I was thinking about like keeping a fire going in your house. I'm in major.
You're in survival mode.
I'm in major survival mode right here. Sorry, I'm going to put out that fire. Sorry, we're thinking about
right because you probably have tools in order to do it.
My house is on fire.
Sorry, not you have a fire in your house. Your house is on fire, Mike.
My house is on fire. That's very bad. This completely changes everything. The English language is very nuanced.
Would you sit there, back off, and let it burn, and call 911, or would you probably go to work immediately and try to do everything in your power to stop it?
Immediately go to work.
Right, but most people don't nowadays. Yeah. But most people identify that they have fire alarms, they have fire sprinklers, they have, houses are built out to certain fire retardant materials, and all those things are there, not because there was some paranoid firefighter at one point in time, just like we talk about this with schools and things, like, a child's never died in a school-related fire.
Really?
Never. In U.S. history that we can find, a child has never died in a school-related fire.
Oh. Way to go, fire.
So why aren't we? And that's the thing is, like, I'm not to get off on a tangent here, but fire is pretty standardized across the country. You could go to most firehouses and see the same shit over and over, the same TTP, same SOPs. Fire's fire. Buildings are buildings. Architecture is architecture. So they have a good system. I think we've kind of figured out bad guys to almost have that same architecture, to where, like, a school, for example, a church, a military base, how do we protect them better? Concentric rings of security. That's what a fire alarm is. That's what, fire escapes are. That's what all those things, just like we would have security aspects in our job. If you're trying to call for fires missions, you're probably going to have support and security around you, right? Because you're kind of an important asset.
I don't want to die,
It's like I look at my kids and my wife that way. You're kind of an important asset. So I'm going to make sure if there's ever a fire, I'm going to make sure if there's ever an intruder, I'm going to make sure if there's ever some issue, I have the self-reliance to do it. And that's not common anymore. And I think that's what bothers us. And I think you're hitting at a very good time to start talking about these things, because we've contemplated that here. Yeah. Greg and I have been talking with the marketing team and a lot of product development that we're working on. I know you and I have been talking about some things.
Some things.
That is absolutely relevant. And I think it's like going back to your statement, like, hey, you should be able to rebuild anything with an axe.
You should.
But Mike, where do I get an axe? You have to learn how to build it.
You have to learn how to.
So, like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. No, it makes exact sense. And if you don't have the abilities to do any of those things, you're not a bad person. You need to be motivated hopefully and empowered to go and find a little bit more about this information. It doesn't take much. No. Survival is actually very simple if you think about the concepts, and because the field craft's a big passion for me as well. I grew up as that swamp rat, man, and my first job was catching rattlesnakes for belt and boot makers.
Oh, here we go. You're going to talk about Florida now?
No.
No, but it's good.
I caught snakes in other states too eventually. But no, I was bred into that. Every morning, I'm waking up and feeding the cows and the pigs and the geese and the turkeys and milking the neighbors' cows before I even went to school. And I feel like, I told the story the other day, and one of my boys' kids was like, "Were you like born in the 30s or something?" And I'm like, "What the fuck?" You do realize there's Americans out there that are farmers and ranchers right now that are actually creating the logistics that we have to eat half the shit we eat.
You were probably one of those guys. We had a guy who came into SEER, and I remember it was like day whatever of not sleeping and day whatever of no food, no water, just working out all day and just getting smoked out in the woods and training to become a SEER specialist. And there's this guy, he's probably out there, Casey Carter, but he's a great guy, and this guy is always ripped. I don't know why, but anyhow, we were working, and I was like, "Man, Casey, I'm kind of tired." He goes, "Well, this ain't nothing." He goes, "I used to work commercial fishing. That sucked."
Yeah, it does.
And sure enough, dude, I think it's easy to forget. Like, man, there are some hard working people out there, dude. Like we had kids come through that course who were farmers or commercial fishermen, and they're like, whatever, dude. Yeah, he's like, I used to cut fish for like 24 hours a day and not sleep and get like a little bit to eat. He's like, that's hard work. And it's like,
that's an interesting, and I think that's where
work inoculation.
But where does it start?
Childhood, man.
Boom.
Yeah.
So you teach your kids, like I always say, you teach your kids, right?
Yeah.
And I know you're working on that now. You got how many kids? You got 5?
Yeah, 4. 4, but no more. I'm done. I'm done at 4.
That's right. You're done at 4.
I'm no more. I'm good.
And I've got 3 boys,
which is incredible considering all the radio transmissions that were blasting through your body and stuff. When you think about it,
I was well. I mean, they're 24, 17, and 15. So maybe it hadn't sunk in all the way yet. I got them out quick.
Yeah.
Pew pew. So, but I also now have with Bertoni, as you know, she has 4 kids, so I got 7 kids.
It's a lot of kids,
and it's a lot of teaching, and I've been taking that on heavily, like I was telling you earlier. Getting them out in the mountains, getting them out of their comfort zone, because their comfort zone it's absolutely identifiable. It's sitting on their ass on a computer.
Yeah.
That's their comfort. That's every kid's comfort zone, I think, at this point, unless you are that kid that came from nothing and you are on a farm, you are out there busting your ass and learning the not the hard way. It's just the normal way. But we look at them and go, wow, that's a really hard job. A professional fisherman won't tell you that. They'll be like, no, it's just my job.
Yeah, that's what I do. Man, I get it. If I was a kid and you're like, hey, do you want to go and milk cows, or do you want to play Xbox like Fortnite? I'd be like, I want to play Fortnite, dude. Like,
if you ask me that right now,
I'd still choose that.
Still play Fortnite.
I'd still play Fortnite. I just want to be lazy. So I get it, and like hard work sucks, man. And like increasingly, and this is kind of a segue, kind of not, but I feel like there's almost, maybe I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this. Fuck it. I feel like there's a war on families, man. I feel like the family isn't the focus of what the United States was, and I feel like the U.S. really focused on the family unit. I really do truly believe that the family unit is kind of the basis of the country, and I feel like when you don't support that and when you don't encourage it, I don't know, man.
Well, Jim and I were talking about this the other day, where he grew up, and it was weird. Same with me, and you probably remember this. Wasn't it weird to be the divorced kid in school? Mm-hmm. Nowadays,
very common.
It's actually almost opposite. People will laugh at you if your family isn't. Oh, your parents are still together now. That's fucking weird.
We say this as both divorced men. You know,
I know, but that's because it's now normal.
Yeah,
it is normal. It's not changed. Because I contributed to it. It's everybody's contributed to it, and is it really a war on families, or is it a byproduct of something else that's creating this appearance that there's also a war on families?
It might be the byproduct of something, man. I mean, is it just? Are we just making worse choices with spouses than what people used to make? Or are we worse people? Or is it that it's more acceptable? Is it a combination?
No, I've always made worse choices until I met Bertoni.
You got to wonder if it's a multitude of factors. So I guess it's harder to say. Maybe it's a little bit premature to say that it's a war in families, but it certainly feels like the focus isn't on what it should be, right? On like, teaching those kids that real hard work right off the bat. I feel like there's a lot of glamorization of things that aren't helpful.
Let's start with something here with that
Hit me.
thought. Okay, you got little ones coming up, right? At what point are you going to, or even your older kids? What point do you, and what specific thing do you teach them about self-reliance? Maybe start there, or maybe let's laser beam it down a little bit to maybe a survival. Let's say, hey, because I just took my kids out and started showing them water gathering and showed them some fire starting in the mountains at 12,000 feet, you know, and some rope management, and that was fun. They loved that. Yeah. They said it was the greatest thing they ever did in their life, and they can't wait to do it again. But I've had them out in the woods numerous times, but that was different. That was catalytic for them. So what was something that you would want to do or suggest to people out there that they can start with?
I think it's important to not make it something that's done later in life. Like you start with your kids at 14, it's like such a change at that point. I feel like this should be something they're kind of, that's just known, earlier in their life. So like, I remember with my older kids now. My daughter's 13, my son's 12, but they knew about survival, and they were taught survival from a very young age. From the time they were interested enough in it, about 3 and 4, because they saw me always getting ready to go out into the woods, or I'd always be practicing stuff, and I just teach them. I'm like, hey, here's how to use a metal match. Hey, here's how to build a fire, and they learn the different fire lays. From the time they're 3 to 4, and of course, how much
incredibly relevant age for that kind of stuff.
Honestly, they can learn that, and they can conceptualize it, and by the time they're 6 and 7, they can start accomplishing tasks. So, such as we go to the woods, I say, hey, your job right now for the next hour is to gather dry firewood. It must be dry, and these are the standards for the fire. It sounds like I'm a military instructor, but that's what I do to them. But you got to give kids purpose. You got to teach them, let them become interested in it, and then you got to give them those standards that you got to hold to, and let them grow that way. I think that's much better than saying, hey, at age 14, we're going to start teaching you. Maybe that is for certain things, but I think with especially self-reliance and stuff, I feel like that's something that's got to be started early, man.
Even psychologists are saying now that if you're not getting a majority of those big principle-based learning in their life before the age of 4, it might be gone.
Really?
Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't still develop. Obviously, we know that human brain cognitively can process, and continue to grow and myelinate up until you're 25, right? Because, the elasticity there is going to maintain until that point. After the age of 25, you got to work. You have to work to stay on it. That's why we felt so good in the younger years, right?
It took me to like 32 before I felt like a full man, to like mature all the way.
Right. I think we all did, but that neuroplasticity stops growing after 25.
Interesting.
So you have to work harder at that point. And I think when you're raised what we would consider properly, right? Knowing self-reliant skills to be independent in the event that I'm ever on my own, need to cook something, need to kill something, need to fish for something, grow something. Yeah, okay, I can do that, right? Where most people can't say yes to any of those things.
Yeah.
I think that's very apparent, and I think we could look at society in general, and I'm sure there's studies out here, probably should look into them, to find out who was raised like that and who in their 20s still was able to be very independent, very self-reliant versus ones that weren't. I would say majority of the people that were probably farm boys, country boys, had to fend for themselves, had to be independent, didn't come from nothing, lived in a single wide trailer in the swamps of Florida, catching rattlesnakes, right, to start out with.
I don't know anybody who did that.
Just me.
Just you.
I think I was the only guy. Everybody even Floridians called me crazy. Yeah. But no, a lot of my friends they would be out there with me. It was fun. And people, from other places thought we were fucking crazy. And I'm like, no, it's just what do you mean it's crazy? Why would you call us crazy? That's weird, right? Yeah. And that was like, you been to Louisiana? Yeah. I used to be a sheriff's deputy down there.
Did you really?
Yeah, for almost 5 years for Tangipahoa, Sheriff Daniels. And
we talked about that.
Oh my God.
That was a different way of policing.
My God, it was incredible. You got to do whatever you wanted to help people.
Yeah.
But no, it was, and you realize that. So I think that in your 20s, and I'll pair it again, Peterson here for always saying you should be crushing yourself in your 20s.
Yeah.
That's when you find in your left and right lateral limits. That's when you should see your extreme, what's the most extreme thing that you can do and know your failure points, because you don't want to find those out in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. And I think that's what's starting to happen is people are now all of a sudden go, oh my God, I got to figure something out.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of these, people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s coming to us. Hey, I've kind of neglected this all my life. I need to become some more self-reliant. Good. Thanks for coming. But it's going to be harder than teaching that kid, you were talking about, from the sticks, man.
You're going to work at that point.
And you better be dedicated. You better be committed at that point, because it's going to be hard.
And maybe to go back to it, because I've really been trying to figure this out. Maybe that's winto the military is so good for so many people. You know what I mean? You get in there.
It forces reliance.
Yeah, it forces that in many cases. I mean, how many guys went into the military and this kid couldn't even put on his own underwear, and then he comes out just kind of a good guy. Not always, but
he can only shine his boots and put his gig on right. So
I don't know. I think there's something to be said there, and that goes for a lot of hard work. And a lot of young men end up getting into some really hard professions early in life, and I think that's good for them. I mean, and you talk to construction workers, guys who work landscaping, construction, dude, that is some tough work right there. That's you do that as you're young, right up to that point when your brain gets that's good for you, I think.
Well, all the stuff we're talking about, I think people are going to ask, well, what the hell do we do then? And I know I'm going to, because we used to do a lot of survival programs, and I love that. I mean, I love shooting. That's my jam. Yeah. That's what I do well. But it's not the only thing that I'm good at. And one of the other things that I love teaching, besides driving, because I used to be a professional driver and instructor, that's my first company, SDI, was all high-performance tactical evasive defensive driving courses for military. And it was closed courses, military contracts. That's why nobody knew a lot about it. And because I love the extreme sports aspect. I love driving fast. And then I got, of course, into the shooting world. But I was still always every school I could ever go to. I remember going to Muckwuck for the first time in Bridgeport for the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare School.
Oh, yeah.
Being a Florida boy, I never saw ice, never saw rock, never saw mountains.
It's been very confusing.
Never saw snow. Nothing. I never think I went outside of Georgia as a kid. And I was high as a kite on that mountain, screaming this is the greatest thing. I'm looking at we're up on 94, which is a famous mountain there, and I'm looking out around. I'm like, this is incredible. And all the other guys that were from those regions were like, shut the fuck up, this is stupid, we hate this. And I'm like, no, why would you guys hate this? This is incredible. And it's because I was loving that next journey of extreme, because I knew what extreme was where I came from. But how many people were miserable? A lot of the city guys, and you got to reframe that mentality if we want to survive, because things are going to get bad. I'm not going to say that they're going to get good, because there's nothing leading towards good right now. Nothing in the administration, nothing in the country, from what we're talking about as a society that has absolutely become weak because of all the great times that we've had. Like you just said, it's not because there's bad times right now. It's because of all the good times that we've had, because of weakness that's created this bad sense, right?
It's too bad. And
good men, of course, like the old saying, has to pick back up. Well, we don't have the answers for that. We don't know exactly I don't have a crystal ball, but I'll tell you what, the people that are more self-reliant and that can actually put, horrible, cruel, unusual, sadistic, almost what most people would consider sociopathic acts against other human beings, that's necessary.
Yeah.
Sure you have to be willing to do that to somebody else, because if you don't, well, then you're just susceptible and everybody else that will to you and your family. So there's no arguing that, but people will still argue it. I've literally talked to people that are, on the hardcore, I guess the more liberal side, anti-gun side, and asked them, like, well, what if somebody broke into your house and tried to hurt your children or was raping one of your children? What would you want to do? And they're like, I would call the cops. And I'm like, you're standing right there. What would you do? I would run out and call the cops. There's people that I've literally talked to like that. I'm like,
would they really though? As a human being, like could you? I've seen how people react. I've worked a lot of. I put people through a lot of very stressful situations, and I truly do believe that people in those situations sometimes do things that surprise them that are contrary to their ideologies because it's the right thing. It's one of my favorite things in life, which is your ideology meets reality and they don't work and reality wins. And so in many cases, your animal brain takes over and goes, yo, let's go. Because I'm guaranteeing you, dude, if you were to walk, if any dude, no matter as far left liberal as he is, if he goes into a room and there's some dude trying to rape his daughter, that's animal chimp, I'm going to rip your throat out mode at that point.
I still think, man, there's people that wouldn't do it.
Dude, that would be so surprising that somebody wouldn't, like, defend their own kid.
They're out there.
That's completely alien to me.
Well, again, you just hit the nail on the head, ideology, right? So the ideology is what creates that. What would make you grab onto a wheel of a C-17 that you know is going to take off and you know you're going to die? It's an ideology, right? Because they want freedom so fucking bad, they're willing to do that for that extreme example.
Yeah.
There's so many examples of that it mind boggles me that somebody would not want to protect their own children.
Yeah, I don't get it, man.
It mind boggles me. But I've seen ideologies around the world that don't care about their own children. How many people do we know in our world that you found out that people sell their own children in the sex slave markets?
I've never heard of anybody that I know directly.
Massive.
Really?
Yes. Now, I don't know anybody specifically that's done that, but we know it's massive because of the reports, especially in the United States, since the United States has now become the #1 epicenter for child sex trafficking.
Jeez.
That's a $480 billion industry.
Who's
Americans? So here's another ideology for you. What I was trying to think of earlier was the average out of a $480 billion industry. You can buy every Starbucks, every NBA team, and put every American kid through college right now. So what kind of logistics train runs? What kind of administrative, financial, logistics, operational train runs a $480 billion industry? A big one.
I need to fix my face because I think I'm doing too much with it right now because that's a lot of information for me to take in. Holy shit.
It's very dangerous, man. We've been dealing with that in the sex trafficking world for the last couple of years now, and helping out some organizations on the side. Yeah. And, it's sickening, dude. I almost couldn't do it. I got really heavily involved for the first year, and then when I started listening to mothers tell me how their children were groomed for 6 years, and
by whom? Who's
on Discord, on Twitch, on Facebook, on Instagram specifically. And these kids are getting groomed and they're literally being taken. So we had a rally right here. We had 5,000 people that we put together. Had Craig Sawyer from Vets for Kids come up, had Jaco Booyens, the White House Council on Sex Trafficking, come out and speak and try to educate parents on, hey, you got to be careful with what's happening here. 18,000 kids went missing last year under CPS care alone. CPS care, which probably wouldn't surprise you.
Why do I feel like this is underreported?
Because it is.
But why?
Because there's a massive infrastructure that controls it, and it takes a lot of politics and a lot of money in order to hide some shit like this. The reason why the U.S. last year became the epicenter is because Europe realizes we're the biggest market. The average pedophile in the United States is from the age of 32 to 42 and has 2 children of his own. Tell me that's not a fucked up ideology.
How is that possible? Wait. He has 2 kids of his own?
Yeah. And he'll still go out and rape other kids. All this is reported, man. It's crazy. I'm gonna have Jaco on here one day and have him talk about all this stuff.
How could you do that as a parent? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like if you're
how could you not protect your child when somebody's raping or murdering them? So you see what I'm saying? Like those are 2 fucked up ideologies that you wouldn't protect your own child, but you'd rape another child, or you would let your child die, like because your life is more important or something. So there are those crazy extreme mindsets out there. So going back full circle here, that's always been there. There's always been those people, but the problem is those type of people that have that horrible, awful, terrible mindset, they're getting larger. They're growing. And everybody's looking at the United States as weak right now, which is why we can just dump a bunch of, money into, for example, again, the child sex trafficking. A lot of politicians are bought off. A lot of politicians right here in my state, and I hope they're listening to me because I'm watching their asses, and a bunch of people are watching their asses, are involved in the child sex trafficking movement because they're bought off by cartels. They're bought off by people that are in the movement. It's sick, dude. It's a whole. I didn't mean to turn this podcast into that, but I think people need to realize, again, from a self-reliant standpoint and protecting your children, Yeah, we listen to mothers sit there and say how their children were kidnapped. One mother never got her child back. The other one got her child back. About a year later, they rescued the child.
How messed up was she?
She is still a prostitute down on Van Buren Street in Phoenix because she was so drugged and her mind was just overtaken, and they changed the architecture on her to where she'll never ever be a real daughter to that mother again.
Yeah,
you know, so it's the saddest stories in the world. But again, those things never happened a long time ago, or at least they weren't talked about anyways. Yeah. And now you hear about it every single day. So 800,000 children went missing last year to what they believe the child sex trafficking. 800,000, I forget the actual numbers, like 840,000 people. Actually, kids went missing.
Are they staying
last year? 460,000 of them were confirmed to go into the child sex trafficking.
Where do they go? Do they stay in the U.S. or they go out to like other countries? Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I've talked to guys. You know, the whole Connex box thing. Yeah.
Yep. So I've heard about that.
That's an everyday occurrence.
It actually did happen to, funny enough, a friend of ours. She got drugged at a club, and she was just out in Seattle, and she happened to have her cell phone on her, and they didn't catch it, and so cops were able to go and crack open, and she was with other girls just in there, just drugged out, and most of them didn't have their phones and stuff, and she got rescued, but
they put her in a box.
Yeah, they put her in a little cargo container that was going to get loaded onto a boat.
This is one of your friends.
Yeah.
See, there you go.
Yeah, I mean,
so you're closer to than you think.
But you hear about it, and you're like, okay, but like, what are the chances this is like a really widespread thing? Because it seems so crazy to me that this is common. You know,
it's a good point. You're right. It's only 800,000 people out of 327 million, so it's a very small percentage. It doesn't matter.
That makes me feel terrible.
But yeah. I think that's how some people might think of it because that's big city stuff. That's not going to happen in my town. Most of it happens in smaller towns because they're smart.
Yeah.
That's why cartels and terrorist organizations don't live in bigger cities because that's where everybody's going to look for the most part. It's, old school tactics, but not to get off on that tangent, but I think that's a part of this self-reliance concept that we're talking about is so teaching your children to identify those indicators as well because they're there, right? Just like, can you start a fire? Can you cook for yourself? Can you do all these things? Can you identify a threat? Can you identify friend or foe?
Well, this
is right. That's all part of what we're talking about.
It is, and that's what I've tried to explain to my daughter a lot too, and I'm sure every good man has explained to their daughters as well, which is that it's all you, man. Nobody's really coming. It's all up to you. Nobody's coming to help you. No one's coming to save you. Like when it really comes down to it, it's just all you, and that applies to a lot of things. That's what we tell people all the time. But like that's what I tell them. That's what I try to have instilled in my daughter. She's a teenager right now, so of course she's doing teenager things. But you try to explain to them that it all comes down to them. You know what I mean? Like there's not a safety. There is, but there really isn't a safety net. You know what I mean? There's your responsibility of your safety kind of ends up falling to you ultimately, and that's kind of a hard thing to hear because you want to be like, okay, well, everywhere should be safe and men shouldn't do X, Y, Z, and agreed, right? Areas should be safe and men shouldn't do X, Y, Z and stuff, but it does happen. So ultimately, the only person who really cares about you is you, and you really got to look out for yourself, man. And like that's the scary part to me about having a daughter is trying to like kind of drive that home about, as safe as it seems, it's still a dangerous world, which is terrible.
I noticed that theme with you lately is, it's probably because all the shit that's gone on in your life as well, both good and bad, and but it creates vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right. And we talk about this every damn show. We talk about this with every guest that comes up, and it's like, well, why do you care about yourself so much? Because you just said that.
You should have a rational self-interest in yourself.
You should absolutely have a rational self-interest in yourself because by taking care of yourself first, you are able to take care of others that we care about, which is the whole definition of or part of vulnerability, right? Yeah. Part of vulnerability training.
And you talk to me about this a lot too. This is something you've really driven home with me, and I've really taken it to heart over the years of us talking, which is being that vulnerable individual, being that compassionate individual. Like that's something that I've really tried to incorporate into my life. And I don't mean to derail you, so don't let me stop you. But that was one thing you told me, and you mentored me through kind of the midpoint of my military career and on, which was like, in the military you always try to kind of have that tough guy
bravado.
Bravado, and I'm a silent warrior, and I hold it in, or even
you're groomed to do that.
You're groomed to do that. Or even as a man, you're taught to do that. But to how did somebody say it? You function from head up and from waist down, but you don't feel it here. you know. And so, but feeling it there is tough, man. And it's taken me a long time, to be honest, as a man, to get to the point where I'm more comfortable and better at communicating how I feel, and also feeling is tough at times, man, because you're really taught to just work and go and try not to let that affect you too much, especially in the doing the kind of stuff that we did, because you see a lot of terrible stuff. So being able to be compassionate and feel that stuff, while at the same time being able to do a job, it's difficult. It's a very difficult balancing act, and I don't know, the best way to go about it other than it takes practice.
It does, and it gets harder before it gets easier.
Yeah.
And then it gets harder again all of a sudden, and then it gets easy, then it gets hard. It's one of those balancing things. So I think it's obviously a part of that yin and yang, the balance and the opposites, and of course, I that's why I love to study the ancient warriors, right? I love to study the concept of which I noticed in all of them. I noticed a divine masculine and a divine feminine in all of them, because that's important. And people, they hear that, like, what does that mean? Like, I'm a masculine. You need to study it then. That's not how it works, right? And the divine feminine, I think, is what brings out your vulnerability as a man. Everybody has both. It's called Shakti and Shiva. And so...
like, wait, I'm not all masculine? That doesn't make sense. Wait, no feminine.
Yeah. And again, that's where a lot of people think the warrior's the bearded, tattooed Viking. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, it's a little quiet dude that you don't know that's on the team, and he's the most savage dude in the world.
Facts.
So the warrior comes from heart,
and
it tells the mind what to do, and hopefully controls the chimp, or I call it my snake, because I've seen my snake before, and I don't like it. I don't like what the snake does to the people I love.
Yeah.
But I love what it does to the people that I can't stand. The evil people, because that snake should never ever come out. And when it does something bad, horribly, terribly wrong, it's going to be. I can tell you that from past experiences. But I wasn't able to control it until later in life, and so that's when my vulnerability kicked in. It kicks in hard times.
Yeah.
For me, it was coming home to a son going, "Mom, who's that?"
Yeah, it's tough. It's super tough.
I thought I was doing a cool thing. I thought I was being a warrior, man. Yeah. Dad's fighting overseas, and it's like that crushes you. That's when you feel it. Yeah. And so when you start to, like you just mentioned, when you feel that and you're on your knees going, that's not how this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
You have to become vulnerable very quick and fix that shit. Yeah, and if you don't, you'll be a miserable, lonely person that is extremely full of yourself. And that's not it. I don't want to be that guy, man.
What's the phrase you said to me? There's gonna be a time when you're fumbling this type of stuff. It's like a delicate egg, right? And you're fumbling it and you're trying to keep it in the air. But if you don't kind of recover yourself and you start feeling that compassion, start being kind of more purposeful with your time and the type of person you are. I remember what you said to me. You said there's gonna come a time, Mike, when you're gonna drop that egg and then it's gonna shatter and you're never
can't pick it up, man.
Never gonna be able to put those pieces together again. And it's been dropped and it's done. And I've really taken that to heart, through my life and through kind of the latter part of my military career, because I think, and I've taught it to a lot of guys who I've worked with, because I think it illustrates a really good point.
I heard something the other day, and I think it's an older video. A pencil. Yeah. It was a pencil video.
Okay.
And somebody said, "You ever see?" It was a professor, I think, and it was an older video. He's like, "You see this pencil?" Yeah. He goes, "What constitutes a working pencil?"
Wood graphite eraser. It's straight and it's sharpened.
It's sharpened.
Yeah.
Right? So it has all the abilities to do all those things.
Sure.
But once it becomes not sharp, what do? You
sharpen it.
Okay. Now, if you take how do you typically sharpen a pencil?
You use a pencil sharpener. You can take a knife and scrape it down. Either way.
Okay. Now, all of a sudden, give that pencil a conscience. Give it a heart. Give it emotions.
Oh, Jesus.
That's all we are, pencils.
Yeah.
The problem is nobody wants to sharpen themselves because it hurts.
I'm going to internalize that one for a few months for sure.
Hence why we need to be self-reliant, and and I think why a lot of people don't want to be, because it hurts. it hurts to go out and teach people these things. It hurts to go out and put yourself in situations that put you on the edge to see what your limits are. It hurts to learn how to start a fire primitively. It hurts to try to figure out where fucking water is in the desert. If I took you out here for 2 days right now, you'd be shitting your pants at hour 6 going, where's the water?
Oh, yeah.
Show you. It's there.
It's there.
But that desert will kill you quicker than a bullet. It hurts. And I think that stuck with me is that pencil concept. Or, I know a lot of people in our world love knives.
Yeah.
How's a knife built?
Metal.
So
Forged,
I take this.
Yeah.
Okay, what's a forge?
Extreme heat is able to. I get where you're
Sure
going.
going?
Yeah, I see where you're going.
How do you build a beautiful knife?
Yeah,
you got to beat the shit out of it. You got to forge it. You got to burn it and scorch it. You got to, in the oils and waters, and then you got to forge it again and pound it again and fold it and then
sharpen it.
And if again you gave that knife a friggin' emotions that is the only way to build a beautifully polished sharp blade.
Yeah, no, you're not.
And then you got to resharpen it, and that hurts too. So I think we're losing the ability to sharpen ourselves.
I think so.
Like our grandpas did back in the day, our dads even.
Yeah, I think so. I think being able to look at yourself critically and determine when you're wrong is also a very hard thing to come to terms with, to understand, and to be able to do. To go and do a drill. Like let's say we go to do a pistol drill and you just suck at it. To be like, oh no, I just kind of suck with a pistol, or to go to build a fire, and it's a very manly thing to build a fire, and then a guy can't build a fire, and he's like, oh well, the wood was wet, and blah blah blah. And that's tough, man.
You can never make excuses.
Yeah,
like how many businesses and people we're thriving right now, and I hope everybody's thriving right now. Again, the 3 big things that fail a company, just like would fail that guy trying to start a fire. He blamed the wood. He blamed this. He blamed that. Well, in business, what do people blame? Well, lack of capital. People,
employees, lazy,
employees, and this. Or, hey man, it's just a bad economic environment right now, and that's why we had to file for bankruptcy and leave.
Yeah.
You're just simply telling me you couldn't start a fire. That's it.
Life's tough, man.
So, well, with that, man.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of ideas and things that we could do, but what do you see? I know you're still working on the foundation, I guess, of Onward Research. I know everybody knows the channel. If you haven't, go there. There's some great information there. But as far as Onward Research goes, what do you want? What do you see? What's the why?
That's a good question. The why is I think that there's some important classes that we need to teach. So we do products, and we'll do products to fill in little gaps as we see here and there. But ultimately, the big goal for Onward Research has been to train people. And we got a lot of big things coming when it comes to that. And I hope that people are excited for the type of training that we're going to be doing, the type of survival training, the what we call man-making training or woman-making training out there.
Man-making training.
Yeah, man-making training or woman-making training, because...
Is there going to be a baby making training?
I think you don't need any of that. To be honest, we don't need any for you.
We have a whole platoon together, I think.
Yeah, we do. We're good. We got a fire team, man. Well, we got more than a fire team.
Yeah,
we got a squad. But we're hoping to influence people, right? Not in terms of Instagram, but
not entertaining influence, but actual substance.
I want people to go to this training and not just learn survival, but I hope that you learn something about yourself. And I can't always tell you what that's going to be, but I hope that when you're at this course that you cry at some point, because it means you hit your breaking point. And almost, I'd say about 50 to 60% of people going through SEER hit that point. And I know they were embarrassed about it, but it was a really good thing because it allowed me to talk about why.
I've thought about this a lot. Is it embarrassment? Or
why they cry? Well, they're embarrassed when it happens because we're hiking in the woods. Like one guy, I remember we were just hiking along. It wasn't even an invasion day. This was just like a basic navigation day. And this guy started crying. And so, we're in an element of like 6 guys, so all the guys, and there's a couple girls in the element kind of look at him, So I was like, hey guys, go gather up over there, get some water. So I pull off the side. I'm like, hey man, like what's going on? And, he's just like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm like, like, no, like talk to me. Like, let's talk about this. He's like, it's just, I'm like, do you miss your family, man? And he just started crying super hard. He goes, I didn't realize what they meant to me. Sorry. And I thought about that a lot, man. I thought about that a lot.
And he was a student.
Yeah, he was a student, man. And so for this guy, what he learned from this, and it's kind of hard to know that you don't, what's really important to you until sometimes, not that you're losing it, but that you're away from it. And for this guy going through this really hard training, it made a lot of people feel, and family is a really common thing for a lot of people, but for him, he realized in that moment how important his family was to him. So that's what he took away from that. And even if it was just that, he realized how important that was. Good.
That's vulnerability.
That's good for me.
The B word, man.
That's
huge.
That's the beginning of something that's really important. That's going to be really important in his life, because for the rest of his life, maybe he'll never tell his family that he cried when he's out there. He'll remember that.
But did you? I'm curious. Did you? Well, I know it sounds like how you dealt with him was extremely proper.
What did I say to him?
Yeah.
That's a good. It's funny. I actually didn't remember until you just told me. He said, I miss my family. He started kind of breaking down. And I said, hey, I want you to, remember something here. You're doing something that's character building right now. And maybe you don't tell everyone what happened here. Maybe you do. But and you know how important they are to you. And I won't need you to get back into training mode, because we need to do things right now. This is the military side, but I'm like, but I want you to remember that they're proud of you when you come back. And I'm like, and again, this is up to you, but you remember what you just felt here right now, and you remember that when you go through your training. Maybe you're going to take your training a little bit more seriously, because if how you feel being away from them, I want you to know how they feel being away from you. And if you're not training your job hard enough, how they're going to feel if you never come home.
So you didn't David Goggins fucking tell him to suck it up, Buttercup?
I didn't. I went pretty hard. And he yeah. I think there's a time for everything.
Yeah.
There's a time.
There's a time for Goggins.
There is a time for Goggins. But yeah,
he's awesome.
I definitely wanted him to internalize that feeling, because I think for him it was really important.
That's incredible the way you handled that. And I think that's the problem we also have across the board, is that is looked at as a sign of weakness. You got a grown ass man with his family over there crying because he misses them. And he's not able to yet connect the dots between his so-called loss or sacrifice at this time, being away from the things that he loved, to the character you were talking about that he's building to become a bigger and better version of himself. So guess what happens? He can go back and help them even more.
Yeah, exactly. And I do wonder what happened with that guy. That was back in 2017. I wonder if he stayed in, if he's out now. I wonder what happened to him.
Yeah, he should reach out to you if he hears this. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Reach out to me, buddy, if you're out there.
Well, that's cool. I think that's an important message right there alone, just for instructors and teachers out there, that the more vulnerable you are, and that's how we teach, man.
Yeah.
People have heard, especially our first podcast where Jared and I talked about how we go about creating a catalyst. That's catalytic right there, because if you went up to him and told him to suck it up, he may have quit.
Yeah.
You'd be like, you know what? I don't need your ass, because I need my family right now.
Yeah.
But when you can give that guy a message, you can use compassion and make him stronger and harder than every other person in that entire team.
That man was a hard dude after that. I'll tell you what, we went into evasion stuff, and that man was laser focused and was one of the best guys in my element.
So probably because of a catalyst that was created there.
100%. That's what you need. So to kind of circle back to what am I hoping people gather from that course? I hope it's something like that.
That's awesome.
We're going to be doing some hard stuff, and it's going to suck physically. It's going to suck mentally, but I hope you get that out of it. I hope that's what they get out of it.
Yeah. Well.
And also how to build a fire and evade.
You're going to be cold and hungry and tired, but you're going to become a better version.
I think so. I think you're going to come out of these courses a better person overall. Yeah. I think that's kind of the goal there.
Well, looking forward to doing something with that with you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Because I think that's what we love to do is kind of create the I want to go to a survival course or any course that when people say, well, how was the survival course? I can say, it was also a survival course.
Yeah.
And which is what people have said about our courses, which at first I was like, what do they mean? Oh shit, are we not doing our job?
Yeah,
are we not teaching them how to shoot? And then we say, can you break that down for us and tell us what that means? And they're like, dude, grown ass men crying. Probably every single class we will have grown ass men crying, not because they're weak, right? Because weakness means the inability to defend yourself from an attack versus, or skepticism or criticism or whatever, versus vulnerability being the vulnerability being the ability to withstand one, to stand up to one, to get, hey man, dude, what did I do wrong after action? You know, because I don't know how many students I'll go up to them like, hey, you know, so next time you do that, yeah, I got it. And you're like, okay, guy, be vulnerable for me just a second, man, and I'm trying to help you here. And if people don't ever break out of that, which a lot of people never will, right?
They won't, yeah.
You know, I think Bertoni told me one time when I was so frustrated, I was like, why can this person not see that forest of what's going to happen if they keep going this direction?
Yeah.
And she said, Travis, it's just not their lifetime to see it.
That's good.
And that helps me out a lot to sit back and go, yeah, but my savior complex. I need to help this person, man. I want to. It's not. I don't have a people pleasing concept, but it definitely survivor. You know, I don't want that guilt of somebody that could have been better, and I could have been there for them.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you can't save the world, man. I've tried, many times, and at least I feel like I have. And it comes back to who are you? And what are you doing for others? That sounds awesome. I can't wait to see what that happens.
It's gonna be good.
What happens with that? And that's going to be location yet? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. We're going to be located up in Idaho, so right outside of Boise. So all you have to do is get your butt out to Boise, and we'll do the rest from there. We'll get you out there. It's going to be fun. I mean, we'll be doing more. I believe we'll have a few things going with the Dragonfly, I'm sure, out there.
Yeah,
it'll be fun, man. I'm personally I'm not just excited for that, but I'm excited to do some stuff with you out there as well. I think that's going to be a really interesting mix of information and of feelings for people. Like, that's going to be some incredible stuff. Like, and like you said, you know, what was the Onward Research Haley class like? Well, it was weird. It was weird. I don't know what it was, but it should be good. I mean, so yeah, you know, we're to kind of wrap up on the Onward kind of side of things. You know, obviously we're new, but we got a lot of good things coming, man. I know I'm very excited because this has been my dream for a long time to be able to kind of leave my mark. You know, like I look at Haley Strategic here and everything that you have and that you've made and built, and I say, that's a mark right there. That's leaving a lasting legacy that everyone's going to remember for a long time. And I'd love to be able to do that and to add my measure of good to the world, if that makes sense.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it should be fun.
And of course, you know, I appreciate that, and but I feel that I'm still trying to figure out what I'm good at.
Me too, man. You're probably a little bit closer than me, so I'll keep badgering you for that stuff.
Well, you know, everybody's, you know, you get the praise like, oh, you're good on camera, you're good at doing stuff, survival stuff like that, shooting, whatever. It's like, maybe.
I mean, we just filmed with each other, and 100%. We did like 1,000 takes. Like, people are like, oh, you look so good. I'm like, I'll tell you, it's not natural talent. I'll tell you, it doesn't feel good. It feels like a lot of work, and I think that's all it is, man. I've seen a lot.
It's like that appreciation you have for acting, you know. And when I talk to actors, we have a lot of, you know, big guys come through, gals, and it's interesting I pick their brain about that. I'm like, okay, I get it now from, you know, doing a little bit of film in the last 20, 25 years, and but I can't imagine what you guys have to go through on a daily basis. I mean,
we're filming so much, man.
I mean, there's a bunch of dickhead actors and actresses out there too, but there's some good ones that come through. Guys that are moving up north to Idaho and Wyoming and Montana and getting away from the bullshit in California.
Yeah, no kidding.
And they come through and they'll tell us everything, man. You talk about sex trafficking, that's a whole other fucking.
God.
Anyways, but yeah, that's.
I feel like we need.
It's not because we're perfectionists.
No.
You know,
I'm certainly not a perfectionist. I'm very far from that.
I actually hate the word perfection.
Same.
I think it's a very dangerous word.
Yeah. I mean, how many people have you run into when you're like, hey, how come you haven't started your company? Or how come you haven't put out that video yet? And they're like, I worked on it. It just wasn't good enough. And you're like, dude, just get it out there. Like, no. I just want to, I need like this
a little
before.
Bit more.
I need to do this before it can be ready. You're like, when will that be done? What's the timeline there? They're like, well, there's some issues, you know, we're held up, you know, and then it's just, it never gets done.
And they're blaming something, again, like we talked about earlier.
It's always something. Or even if they're not blaming something, they're like, I refilmed it. Or hey, this product the product's not ready. The product isn't ready.
I'll tell you, I can understand that though, because I went through. It might have been last year, the year before that. It could have been all the injuries and stuff that I had, and surgeries, and fucking world burning alive. And apparently, I mean, I was at home drinking beer, but I don't know what everyone else was pissed off about.
I don't know.
And I started to realize that I was doing that. You ask the guys here, I started getting pissed off that it wasn't perfect. And I forgot my own, my own rule to this perfection concept is, and I know it's been around for a long time, but you should never strive for perfection because perfect is what? It's this unreachable.
It's unattainable.
It's unattainable, right? Yeah. People, I think that there's a perfect. And I think we have an idea of what perfect could be.
We know what it looks like. We kind of barely taste it, maybe.
Yeah, sometimes. But you might never get there. But I'll tell you what, if you strive for excellence versus perfection, like the old saying, you won't ever be disappointed.
I agree with you, man. And like the thing that I always tell people on that kind of fact too, when they're like, I don't know if I'm like ready to do this. Like I'm like, people are always going to tell you that you're either too young and inexperienced, you haven't done it long enough, or that you're too old and you're out of touch of it. Or if you're in it, then they're like, just focus on doing your job, and ultimately you just end up.
All of those suck.
All of those suck, dude. And ultimately what happens is you just end up dying, and that goes to the graveyard with you. And that's where that idea lies. Just like everyone else in that graveyard probably had a great idea that never executed it. So I'm like, you're only alive for so long, man. You could die tomorrow of an aneurysm. So what are you going to do knowing you're dying tomorrow? It's a good question. And
what did Al Pacino say in Heat?
I can't remember.
You get killed walking your doggy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I get killed for telling you this shit, man. Yeah, you get killed walking your doggy.
When you played that character a little too hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I walk the dog, I'm like, I hope I don't get killed. This would fucking suck.
You could, but it's a really good question because it's something that I focus a lot on my channel too, which is your time, right? What are you doing with your time?
That's a good question.
A lot of people are not very focused with your time, but your time is the single most valuable resource that you have, and it's finite. Yeah. You don't know how much of that time you have, but you do only have a certain amount. So how you spend it.
How do you prevent from people stealing your time, Mike? Because that's the thing. Yeah. Right? It's hard. It's hard in our industry, in our world, and when you're out there and you're helping as many people as you can, and you're doing what you believe is a good thing, and it's hard not to have people steal your time.
I haven't personally had a problem with people stealing my time because I found my interactions to generally be pretty genuine. Like usually if it's something trying to steal my time, it's like an email. It's like, Garand Thumb, would you like to? And I'm like, all right, delete. But I found that all of my interactions are typically good. I found that who steals my time the most is myself.
I was wondering if that would come out.
Yeah,
that's my biggest threat.
Yeah, I am my own biggest threat to spending my time. Because everybody needs to relax. People shouldn't take spending your time as okay. You never have a moment to yourself because you need to decompress and stuff. But do I need to play Red Dead Redemption 2 for 8 hours? No, that's probably a bad thing to do, and that's not spending my time wisely because that's time that should be spent in other ways.
Especially with a family. 90 minutes a week at least should be spent on planning your family, your business, your stuff that the family's going to be directly affected, school, kids, schedules, etc. Budgets, all that stuff. And a lot of people don't do that. And a lot of psychologists believe that's what leads to the majority of divorces today is because people don't have that at-home dinner time anymore. Yep. They don't have – I make sure every single night, and I guess this goes a little part with the self-reliance, the training, the survivability, community, every single night, whether we can do it in the mornings or not because the kids – we got 6-7 kids running all over the place and different time of day of school and stuff like that starts. My boys are in the gym at 5 a.m, so they're not going to be. I'm not going to be waking up making breakfast for them.
Yeah,
you get a protein shake, man.
Yeah.
But every night we sit down as a family at the table every single night, and everybody helps. Everybody does all the dishes. Everybody does everything, and that's the best time to talk.
I agree, man. I agree. You know what the other big killer is?
Oh yeah, that's obvious.
I know, but a lot of people don't think about it, man.
I don't know how many families I see sitting around a table and all of them are on their phones.
How many times have you gone out for dinner with Bertoni and you sit down at the table and you look at the couple next to you and they're just...
We actually been doing, the whole stacking phone thing.
Yep.
Like stack them. So
done.
Now we're trying to just sit down at a dinner table and we stack them and we have 8-9 phones high.
Yeah.
Like at least 8 every time we go out with all the family.
Yeah.
And everybody walks by and looks at that. They see that. That's a catalyst.
That's cool.
And I've actually noticed looking around other tables, and you'll see other families stacking their phones. Yeah. Like, dude, it's infectious. And that's because everybody wants to be able to do that. You want to be able to put that thing away and just because, every day we live on it all day long, right? Whether you're at work and you're like, hey, let's make that. I need to lower that topography over there. or whether you're talking on phone or whether you're doing emails or whether you're constant. I mean, it's destructive. So you're absolutely right. So even things like that, I love throwing those type of tips out there that I found the hard way. And you start seeing everybody else looking at you like, what the fuck is that pile of phones?
That is incredible. So usually we just put them away and we're like, just don't do it. Or when we go home,
because it's temptation right there.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really cool. At night, what we do, me and Ash, is it's like a game. I'll grab her phone out of her hand if I see it, and I'll huck it as hard as I can. But it's a point, right? It's the illustrating the point that fuck this phone. Like
you just do that just out of the blue.
Yeah. I'll do it all the time. She does it to me too. And it's just like it's a sign. It's like, hey, not right now. Be in the now. Because I know it's a problem with me. I'm sure it's a problem with you. But like all my business and work, is on this guy right here. It's hard to get away from that.
What's your love language?
Touch. 100%.
Is it?
Oh yeah. I like.
So is mine.
Yeah, so is mine. That's why we get along. Guys hugging from behind. I'll hug Ash all the time. She's like, "Get off me."
Yeah, Bertoni's is too. So that works out.
Oh, that's perfect.
But is Ashley's quality time?
Ashley's is affirmation, words of affirmation. She loves words of affirmation.
Same with Bertoni.
Yeah. So Ash needs to hear that talk more than she needs to feel the hugs and stuff. So
some guys rather like, what the fuck are they talking about? Get vulnerable guys, right? She should come first.
100%.
So, which is actually a book. Have you read that? She Comes First. It's awesome. Just trust me.
I have not.
Yeah, I may have it. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, please.
And that's the concept there is like, hey, throw the phone. No, I need that quality time because, touch is easy.
Yeah.
It's just like conation when we talk about your instinctual strengths. Like for me, I'm a quick starter and I'm a builder. I love to implement. So those are easy.
Yeah.
What's hard for me? Following through, fact finding.
Yep.
Words of affirmation are actually hard for me.
Yeah, interesting.
Giving gifts is hard for me because I grew up good, but I never really cared about materialistic things. I don't care about what car I drive. I've never bought a new car in my life.
Yeah.
I don't, and I could easily. I just don't do it. And but I should work on that because your love language is how you give to other people. So that might be also affecting people's lives because if I'm on this and your love language is quality time, you're automatically going to have this. There's going to be dissonance between us.
Exactly.
And so I try to work on the other ones that are weaker. I think that's a big part of being a man.
That's interesting. That's not something I've focused on so much, but I think I will because Ash is the way that she is, and so I focus on her love language and stuff, and I don't focus on the other ones. But that could be that's kind of especially it's going to sound really kind of fucking weird, but your employees. They also have their love languages, which
absolutely,
and it's not love in the same way, but it is showing affection for them. It's showing that you care for them, that you appreciate them and stuff, and that stuff's important to know too. You should know them.
Yeah,
I think it's important, and we actually recently ran into a problem between two of our employees because they had different ways of communication. One was very stoic in the way that they talked, and the other one. They like to be told that they were doing a good job, and they weren't. That's just
words
not
of affirmation.
Yeah, so we had to mediate, and they had to explain that to each other, and they're both like, "Oh, that's how that goes." Yeah. And it's a very simple conflict, but
it's basic human psychology. They're not like fluff freaking books or anything. They're real. Like the 4 agreements is what I mentioned earlier. I think if everybody did that for one day. Just be impeccable with your words, right? Don't take things personally. Don't make an assumption, right? And be excellent. Strive for excellence every day.
Sure.
The world would be a boring place if everybody did that. We'd have no job security, but...
That sounds fine to me. I'll go and be a farmer or something.
But I'm totally fine with that.
I'm totally fine with that.
Totally fine with that.
I'm good. If there came a time in the world where we didn't need to do violence... Wonderful, man. Absolutely wonderful.
And the reason why I bring these interesting concepts up that a lot of people would think are liberal, hippie type or spiritual type is because I've seen love languages come out in combat.
Interesting. Okay, hit me.
I've seen people that are needing words of affirmation in a gunfight.
Interesting.
In a stressful situation.
Yeah, I understand.
It was a guy that I was, I'm not going to mention his name, but he was shot, and it was total depression to the point where I'm just going to die. I'm not going to live, and you're like, okay, so there was a different type of words of affirmation.
Yeah. And
that affirmation was more in the sense of, hey, you have to realize where you're at. You have done an incredible job. You're a fucking hero for what you've done thus far, because what he did was incredible.
Yeah.
And it was not his job to do what he did. And I said, but look, man, nobody's coming for us. Big Army's not coming. Yeah. Okay. We've got no comms right now, and shit is bad. And there's not many of us. Okay. So we can either sit here and cry and die, or we can fight like you've been doing, like you've been fucking kicking ass, and we need you, brother, just for a little bit longer. Yeah. And then fortunately we were able to get him out and save his life. But I saw this instant light in him when I was like, you've been doing a fucking amazing job. Why can't you still do that? You're still capable of doing some of those things. Yeah. And he kept going until he started losing consciousness. And
Jesus.
So like that was a thing that stood out to me. And of course, and that's the biggest one. I can't really think of an example of like giving. Hey, can I get something before I go? You know, like no, it's like before I shoot this fucker, can I get $100?
Can I get a hug?
Yeah, can you give me a hug? Yeah, but physical touch is important. You know, I see that in extreme sports a lot. So
100%.
as a tandem master, I think I have a little bit over 1,200 tandems with people, and I say that number just because I've had a great opportunity to strap another human being to my body and hurl their ass out of an airplane. And of course I always ask in the beginning, what do you think it's going to feel like? Oh, fucking roller coaster. And well, obviously it's not, as you know,
it's not a roller coaster at all.
It's freedom. It's freeness.
Yeah,
it's like, and as soon as they get out, they're like, wait, this actually isn't that bad. This is incredible. And they're excited now. Right. And,
you gotta learn those languages real quick on those people
in the airplane.
Oh yeah.
Right. In the airplane, when you see somebody that's nervous, everybody needs this. Everybody needs, especially the people that do like physical touch. Yeah. Which I'm a physical touch. I'll either, if it's a guy, I'm like, hey, buddy, you ready? And I'll hit his shoulders in front of me, rub his shoulders, right? And say, hey, you ready, dude? You remember what was, let's go through the checklist really quick. What are the 4 things that I just told you to do when we get to the door? And then like, oh, yeah. You'll see his physiology change or her physiology change instantly through physical touch. Yeah. When somebody's depressed, and if you know their love language is touch, you touch them. Yeah. You know, and even if it's not, it still creates a physiological change to them that, you know, releases dopamine and a couple of other chemicals that actually help you come out of that. Yeah. And next thing you know, that person's not as nervous. They're now trusting you. Yeah. And that anatomy of trust is very important. And I think that's what those concepts that people have come up with in our lives that they write about every day have. And if you pay attention to them, you'll think differently.
You bring up a really good point that 2 points I want to talk about, but like, you notice in the military, at least, I'm sure you've seen the same thing. I mean, how many times have you been going to go jump or to do a mission with your guys before you do? You're like, you're like bumping helmets with them, and you're like, hey,
it's like a football team.
It's like a football team, but it's that touch. You know, a lot of guys are like that. So you're
some of them are not.
Hey, let's go, buddy. Yeah, some of them are like that. But
touch me again and I'll kill you. Remember fucking Stripes? Remember the movie Stripes? Yeah. Touch me again and I'll kill you. Like that guy was not physical touch.
Yeah, and it's interesting. But this brings me to when I was in medical school, we actually had like a series of classes on delivering bad news. So it's like, so it broaches the question like, so, you know, you're a doctor, I'm a patient. And we do a test on me to see if I have brain cancer. And you see the test and it says I have inoperable terminal brain cancer. How do you tell me? How do you broach that topic? And so that was a big...
Wow, that stumped me. Yeah, I don't know.
It would stump any human. that's
Nobody's prepared to tell somebody that kind of horrible news.
Yeah, nobody should have to, you know. But unfortunately, in the medical profession, it has to be somebody. So this was a big class that they went through. How do you tell someone that they're going to die? They're actually usually like, okay, well, this sucks, you know. But how do you tell them that their loved one died? How do you say, hey, your husband was in a routine surgery and he passed away, and that's life-changing for somebody where they're not going to be able to support? Like, what do you do? And so a lot of it was that compassion through what are they going to need? It was like, it was actually a very human course. It was like, you have to recognize that, like, humans aren't like a machine. Like, hey, touch left shoulder, you know, say, I'm so sorry, pat, you know, or something like that. It's like, what do they need? Like, and they showed real examples, and it was tough, man. It was really tough to watch, even in a classroom setting with like 300 other people watching, like, you know, and it was different every time. But man, that taught me a lot about not just like how to communicate, but like compassion behind it too. Like, man, what a tough subject to
Sounds
broach.
like something we definitely need the military. That's a massive human factor that's missing.
Yeah,
I think. I mean,
I
it
think
really
so.
is. I've lost a lot of friends, man.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I lost my 32nd friend to suicide.
God damn, sorry, man.
And
It's rough.
nobody tells you how to deal with that.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to call the families that I know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's hard.
Yeah.
Because nobody teaches that shit. So, anyways,
No, man,
it's sad.
Yeah.
That's why we need that. I think that's why that's why we love teaching so much,
Yeah.
because you are able to create a catalyst for people that they can see. They can literally see themselves becoming a bigger and better version of themselves just by you sharing. It's not because
Yeah,
you're
man.
some moral authority over them, like you said earlier. It's because you're really truly showing them how to share, and that's important. And one thing that I'd like you to share is we ask this every podcast. We started doing this here recently. What is something that Mike Jones has, and you've been through a lot, man, with life, the military, your retirement, your medical, family, you know, marriage, divorce, and kids, and broken homes, and injury, you know, the whole 9 yards. You know, trying to figure out what you're going to do in life, and you're like, I'm just going to quit, you know, medical school, and all the other things that I don't even know about your life. I'm sure this massive bucket. Yeah. But what's something that you've really truly sacrificed to get where you are? What have you left behind? Maybe what have you sacrificed?
Man, that is a hard question. That is.
Just be present with for a second.
Yeah. I think that one thing that happens, I guess, as you grow up a little bit, man, is there are some things that you think are dreams when you're a kid or when you're an adult. And then there are things that you have to give up because you realize that there's something more important in your life that you need to pursue instead. So a lot of people think of that as giving up a dream, which is what I thought it was at first, but to give it up for something more important. So I remember giving up a very incredible opportunity I had in the military because I realized that my kids needed me more than I needed that military thing to happen for myself. And that was something I had worked towards for a very, very long time. And that was very difficult for me to make that decision. But making that decision instead to take that time with the kids instead was a much greater thing that I could have ever done than anything I could have ever done. And so it sounds kind of stupid, but I definitely gave up what I thought was a dream. Now as I'm older, I realize it wasn't really. It was something that was very important. I think that's a part of being an adult and being a parent.
Wow.
Yeah. It's tough when you think about it, man. I remember when I talked to my buddy about it. I said, "Hey, I have this." And he said, "Do you like your family?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I want you to be honest with me and tell me what it's going to be like for you when you don't see your kids for the next 6 years." He's like, "Can your kids handle that?" No, man, they needed me.
Yeah.
That's nothing against them. That's just every kid's different, man. Some kids can handle it. Mine needed me. And so making that was a tough choice, dude. But it was an important one and a very important one in my life. And I think about it a lot because, you know, they're what matters most in the end. You know, if everything were to crumble and everything falls away and Garand Thumb falls away, it doesn't matter. You know, those are all just fans and stuff. But at the end of the day, the only person that you can really fail are those kids. And man, they are your responsibility. So something that really sticks with me.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I acknowledge you for sharing that.
Anytime.
Yeah. That's a hard one.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough one to think about for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's what a lot of fathers know and understand.
Yeah. and it goes both ways.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, from my personal perspective, I lost those 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, with my kids, my oldest boy,
Yeah.
which was my catalyst as well. You know, we share a lot of that in the same, just different times.
Yep.
And but I never thought about that because I left the military at 15 years of service, you know, with reserves and active duty time frame, and realized that I felt like a horrible person because I was leaving.
Yeah.
My dream to be a career Marine.
Yeah.
You know, I had other I guess pathways I was looking into and taking. You know, I went over and took the Delta screening.
Yeah.
And then the war kicked off. I'm like, well, I'm not going to go start all over and have to go through OTC and do all that stuff. I'm going to stick with my boys, and I'm glad I did that. To come home now to a further life of a year away from my family, and then walk into my kid not knowing who I was.
Yeah.
I did lose that part, but I got it back with my other kids. And I'm glad you get to do that now, because a lot of us will always define our life as a military man. And you will.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you spent 1 year or 30 years.
Never leaves
You're going to define part of your life, but don't ever define it all. It doesn't define everything in you and who you are. It's the decisions that you made that define who you are. 100%. And I think that's a really good decision, man. That's a good idea, and I hope you feel really good about that.
I do. Love the kids, man.
That's awesome.
It's a really good life, is what me and my wife say to each other like a lot. You know, watching the kids play, and we go, you know what, this is a good life.
And I know there's always a concept. They're like, I didn't do enough. I didn't serve enough. I didn't do enough combat. Like for me, I was like, I didn't go enough. I should have went more.
Yeah,
that's just the savior complex talk.
It is. Yeah.
And however, at the same time, I know in your time that you've been, because I mean, you just got off of active duty, man.
A couple,
you just
like 2 weeks ago.
And I know it's been a struggle to try to say everything you want to say.
Yeah.
And I know you're starting to do that now, which is I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of that story, because we can't do it. I mean, we've been on for 2 hours. We're not even hitting the tip of the iceberg.
We have a lot more to talk about.
We will.
Yeah.
And I think, but at the same time, man, I want you to know, and I'm sure a lot of people out there would say the same thing, you have helped. And I'm still trying to figure out how the hell you did this. More people in the world with knowledge transfer than you could have ever helped in your military service, in your career.
Yeah,
that's true. Right?
Yeah, thank you.
It's not because you just got fans. It's because you're putting out good information. Thanks, you know, that's inspiring. It's empowering. It's entertaining. It's fun, and there's a serious message behind it.
I appreciate that.
And so I hope people realize that out there. And I'm looking forward to see how much more comes and how much more fun we can have together. I love you, brother. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me on, brother.